Hey YouTube, today we're working on a project soundboard for Gottlieb Pinballs. This one is out of my haunted house and it is fully working. And this one is the exact same board in the same revision, but it's out of a bert. And this came off of an operator's shelf, and you can tell that they've taken some ICs off of there. The ROMs are out of it already, and then this heat sink is missing as well. So I'm going to try and repurpose this bert board, which I don't have a use for. I don't have the other boards that bert uses, don't have a bert game, but I do have a haunted house, and I can keep this as a backup. Now, interestingly enough, my haunted house here, I can't tell if this is the factory board. You can tell that the ROM labels are not factory. But it's interesting that the Vortrax chip, the SC01, is populated on this haunted house board, even though it doesn't use it. So I don't know, maybe this came out of a black hole, but these are really expensive voice generating ICs now. And I don't even know if these ones work because haunted house doesn't use it, but it's good to have these if I would ever come across a good deal on a black hole, because that would need these speech chips. So the bert one also obviously has the speech chip, but it's not going to be used in haunted house. Now, some things that I had to go through and do, they've already removed the 240 pin ICs. So this is a 6502 CPU and then a Riot chip, a 6532. I don't know if these were already socketed on the bert board or not, because they were completely removed if they were socketed. So I put in some machine pin headers. I had to do that because it might not be completely evident on video, but there was probably about a dozen of those out of the 80 traces there. Had some pulled pads, and I wanted to make sure that there was a good connection. So some of these I actually soldered from the top and then soldered them from the back side. So it's kind of interesting. I think one side on each chip was fine, but then the other sides needed some top to bottom soldering. But hopefully that'll be good enough on there. So my plan here is I can just take these two, since I know they're working, swap them over there, and then take the two ROMs and swap them over there, and then see if this thing works. I'll probably, since these are the bert ROMs, I've scraped the labels off of those, I'll erase them. They're 2716s, and then I'll copy the code off of these ones and then put them on those ones eventually. So hopefully the goal here is to put its own EPROMs in, and then I think I have a spare MPU that has alkaline damage on it, because this is the same CPU that the MPU uses in System 80s, and this is the same Riot chip that they use. So I might have some junk boards that have those on there that I can keep these populated. Because the other danger with using these SIP sockets, especially when you're removing chips, if you have your trusty screwdriver underneath and you're prying up, you have to remember that at the tip of your screwdriver you're also prying down, so it's really easy to gouge these traces that are in there when you're not using a closed frame socket like that. So if it goes well and everything is working, then I'll go through and I'll cap this one as well and just keep it in the closet as a spare. Some other things that I'll need to do on the back side is there are some jumpers on this board. So there's a total of 3 green ones. They're kind of hard to see, but there's 1, 2, 3. And then on this one, again, it might be a little bit different because it was using a bert. It looks like this one's the same. This one is disconnected, so I'll have to track that back down. And then there is no third one, but you can tell right here there's a little bit of a cut wire there. So I'm going to have to go through. It looks like that's the long one from there, maybe, but then that third one's not in there. So I'm going to have to do some guessing and checking and see what those jumpers do and if they're needed. And then I guess we'll come back once everything's back in and populated. And again, I'm going to copy these ROMs. Gottlieb still has copyright protection on that stuff, so you'd have to contact Steve at Pinball Resource to get those made. But if I already have some, I'm just going to read them with my programmer and then save the file. So we'll be back in a minute. We have the bert board installed in Haunted House. It's been running for about an hour. Already play tested it once, and everything's actually working. We'll go ahead and hit start. Everything's sounding good. Have side effects here. Oh no, it's the other one. Hard to play one-handed. And these ones again. But yeah, everything Sound wise seems to be good. I didn't crank up the volume or adjust the volume at all just because it's just a temporary test, but everything actually sounds pretty good. Back on the bench and ready to wrap this one up. This is the original Haunted House board. The Q*bert one that we saw in the last clip is working, and it's still just testing in the machine. I grabbed my spare alkaline damage MPU to get some of these 40 pin chips on there, and this one is some good corrosion going on there. And I did pull off this 6502, but I kind of noticed that it was right on the edge of the corrosion zone, and while this looks okay to use, I don't want to stuff it in that brand new socket and then not look at that board for 5 years while it sits in the closet, then come back to some corrosion that happened on the socket, which might damage the board if I try to repair that socket again, since that has already had a lot of heat cycles on those pads. So I don't think for the $5-10 to get a new 6502 is probably worth the risk of damaging the Q*bert board. I did scavenge a 6532 Riot off of here. There's a total of 3. I just grabbed the first one. That one was not impacted by the corrosion zone, and this board is probably toast anyway. You can see how bad that connector is. So good for parts as long as they're not corroded. But I can test that 6532 in my Neolock tester. I've done a different video on this, and all I had at the time was PIAs, 6820s and 6821s to test. But you can test these Riot chips on this tester as well. So I think it's this button. And asterisk means that each port there is good. We can test it again. It goes pretty quick. And then those. So that one should be good. And then I'll probably just go ahead and toss that in my Q*bert board. Has a permanent holder there. And then I have already copied my ROMs and put them on the old Q*bert one, so I'll go ahead and install those on the Q*bert board, and then probably just order a 6502 that's not potentially crusty and alkaline damaged. And then in terms of other things that I'll need to do to that Q*bert board, I'll need to order parts. I'll need to grab a heat sink here. I think it's a TO-3 transistor one, but I got to make sure that it's the diamond one and not the one that has square sides. It needs to be diamond so it kind of fits in between these capacitors. I'll also order some capacitors to do this kit. I think these are all on the edge. The factory ones were 47 at 35. This one's already been capped. I think I just had 100-volt ones on there. And this tall one's a 470, and then I think this is another 47 at 35. So we'll order those caps. I'll put a heat sink on there, order a 6502, and that one should be good to go. Another thing worth mentioning that I didn't catch in the other videos, but I did it off camera. I made sure my dip switch is matched there. I'm not sure what those control on a Q*bert, but I'm guessing you can probably maybe look it up in the manual. Maybe it disables this lane of the speech chip so that it doesn't use it. But that might be important to make sure those match. And then on these jumpers that I did on the back side, obviously made the Q*bert board match. This is the original Haunted House one. But it was very interesting that if you get out a loop or a microscope, you might have to grab something to point with. These jumpers are obviously jumping 2 points together, but they also have a severed trace on all of them. So I think between these two pads, there was a severed trace. So it was modified at the factory to cut that and then put the jumper in. And then you can see that this one kind of, this solder pad goes down and it actually connects to this one, but the trace has been cut here, so there is no longer continuity from there to there. And then where this one goes up, there was another cut right here. So it not only are the jumpers adding continuity, but there's also a cut in there too. And you want to make sure that you're getting the jump and you're getting the cut there too. And I think on this one, I think there was a cut trace on here, and then there might have been a cut trace here. But you'd want to definitely look at those with a microscope or a loop and make sure that, if you're adding the jumper wire that you're not restoring that cut trace, because that's what I had to be careful of. A lot of these is if you're adding more solder, it'd be easy to bridge the trace that was intentionally cut. So kind of a fun little project. I've always liked the the overlap between taking, in this case, a video arcade board and making it work in a pinball machine. It's kind of neat how a Q*bert and a haunted house obviously don't go together, but whoever made this board, you know, if it was in the house of Gottlieb or whatever it may be, that you can swap them back and forth with some attention to detail and get it to work. And it might be useful down the road because the Q*bert boards are super expensive because of this chip. I think this chip, if it's working, is like $80 and up. But if you find a parted out Q*bert board where someone has already scavenged this chip, you can use a video like this and all the details in it to make that board still serviceable in a haunted house. Couldn't do it in any of the other System 80 games that talk, like Black Hole and on Mars. God of War might do it too. I don't know. I know Black Hole does, but that's about it. So hopefully you found this video helpful, and good luck out there.